Welcome to Gorm the Old's Big Ideas in History. Reading by me, the Guard from Oblivion. In this reading, we will cover every era of human history. Please comment below about whatever I left out which you feel enraged about. Thanks for listening, and please like and subscribe. Prehistory. Prehistory refers to the period of human history before the existence of written records. It encompasses the time from the earliest known use of stone tools by hominins, approximately 3.3 million years ago, up until the advent of writing systems around 5,000 years ago. This era is studied primarily through archaeology, anthropology, and other scientific methods such as carbon dating and genetic analysis. Prehistory is typically divided into three major periods: the Paleolithic, Old Stone Age, characterized by hunter-gatherer societies and the development of basic tools; the Mesolithic, Middle Stone Age, a transitional phase with advances in tool technology and the beginnings of settled life; and the Neolithic, New Stone Age, marked by the advent of agriculture, domestication of animals, and the establishment of permanent settlements. Understanding prehistory is crucial as it lays the foundation for the development of human civilizations and provides insights into the evolution of human culture, technology, and social organization. Paleolithic Era. The Paleolithic Era, also known as the Old Stone Age, is the earliest period of human history, spanning from approximately 2.5 million years ago to around 10,000 BCE. This era is characterized by the development and use of the first stone tools by early hominins. During the Paleolithic, humans lived as hunter-gatherers, relying on hunting animals, fishing, and gathering wild plants for sustenance. The period saw significant evolutionary advancements, including the emergence of Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and eventually Homo sapiens. Social structures were typically small and nomadic, with early humans forming bands or tribes. The Paleolithic era also marks the beginnings of art and symbolic behavior, evidenced by cave paintings, carvings, and burial practices. This era ended with the advent of the Neolithic Revolution, when humans began practicing agriculture and settled life, leading to the development of civilizations. Mesolithic Era. The Mesolithic Era, also known as the Middle Stone Age, is a prehistoric period that bridges the gap between the Paleolithic, Old Stone Age, and the Neolithic, New Stone Age. It roughly spans from around 10,000 BCE to 5,000 BCE, although dates vary regionally. This era is characterized by significant changes in human lifestyle and technology as societies adapted to the post-glacial environment following the last ice age. During the Mesolithic, humans transitioned from a primarily nomadic hunter-gatherer existence to more settled communities, often exploiting a broader range of food sources, including fishing and small game hunting. Technological advancements included the development of microliths, small, refined stone tools that were often hafted onto wood or bone to create composite tools such as arrows and spears. The Mesolithic also saw the beginnings of domestication of plants and animals in some regions, setting the stage for the agricultural revolution of the Neolithic. Culturally, this period exhibits increased complexity in social organization, art, and ritual practices, as evidenced by archaeological finds such as burial sites and decorated objects. Overall, the Mesolithic era represents a critical transitional phase in human prehistory, marking the gradual shift towards more complex and sedentary ways of life. Neolithic Era. The Neolithic Era, also known as the New Stone Age, marks a significant period in human history characterized by the transition from nomadic hunter-gatherer societies to settled agricultural communities. This era began around 10,000 BCE and lasted until approximately 3,000 BCE, varying by region. Key developments during the Neolithic include the domestication of plants and animals, the establishment of permanent settlements, advancements in tool-making with polished stone implements, and the emergence of pottery. These changes led to increased food production, population growth, and the foundation of complex societies. The Neolithic Era laid the groundwork for subsequent cultural and technological advancements, ultimately shaping the trajectory of human civilization. Chalcolithic Era. The Chalcolithic Era, also known as the Copper Age, is a prehistoric period that marks the transition between the Neolithic, Stone Age, and the Bronze Age. It is characterized by the first use of metal tools alongside traditional stone tools. This era typically dates from around 4,500 to 3,500 BCE, though the timeline varies by region. During the Chalcolithic, societies began to develop more complex social structures, engage in early forms of agriculture, and establish permanent settlements. The introduction of copper metallurgy allowed for improved tools and weapons, which contributed to advancements in farming, craftsmanship, and trade. The Chalcolithic Era is significant for its role in laying the foundations for urbanization and the rise of early civilizations. Ancient history. Ancient history is the study of recorded human history from the earliest times until the early Middle Ages. It encompasses the development of the first civilizations, including Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, the Indus Valley, and ancient China, as well as the classical civilizations of Greece and Rome. This discipline examines political, social, economic, and cultural aspects of ancient societies, exploring topics such as the rise and fall of empires, technological advancements, religious beliefs, and interactions between different cultures. Ancient history provides critical insights into the foundations of modern civilization and helps us understand the origins of contemporary social structures, governance, and cultural practices. Prehistoric Era. The prehistoric era refers to the period of human history before the existence of written records. It encompasses the time from the earliest known use of stone tools by hominins, approximately 3.3 million years ago, up until the advent of writing systems around 3000 BCE. This era is typically divided into three main periods: the Paleolithic, Old Stone Age, Mesolithic, Middle Stone Age, and Neolithic, New Stone Age. During the Paleolithic period, early humans lived as hunter-gatherers, developing basic tools and mastering fire. The Mesolithic period saw gradual advancements in tool technology and the beginnings of settled communities. The Neolithic period marked a significant transformation with the advent of agriculture, domestication of animals, and the establishment of permanent settlements, leading to the rise of complex societies. Since there are no written records from this time, knowledge about the prehistoric era is derived primarily from archaeological findings, fossil evidence, and anthropological studies. Understanding this era is crucial, as it lays the foundation for the development of human civilization and culture. Bronze Age. The Bronze Age is a significant period in ancient history, characterized by the use of bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, for tools, weapons, and other artifacts. It marks a technological and cultural advancement following the Neolithic period and preceding the Iron Age. The Bronze Age began at different times worldwide, roughly around 3,300 BCE in the Near East and later in other regions. This era saw the development of early urban civilizations, complex social structures, trade networks, and advancements in art and writing. Key civilizations during the Bronze Age include Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, the Indus Valley, and the Minoans of Crete. The period is notable for innovations in metallurgy, the rise of city-states, and significant cultural and technological progress that laid the foundation for subsequent historical developments. Iron Age. The Iron Age is a significant period in human history that marks the widespread use of iron and steel for tools and weapons, following the Bronze Age. It began at different times around the world, generally starting around 1200 BCE in the Near East and later in Europe and other regions. The Iron Age is characterized by advancements in metallurgy, agriculture, and social organization. Iron tools and weapons were stronger and more durable than their bronze counterparts, which allowed for improved farming techniques, military capabilities, and craftsmanship. This period saw the rise of complex societies, increased trade, and the development of early states and empires. The Iron Age also includes notable cultural and technological developments, such as the construction of hill forts in Europe and the spread of iron-working knowledge across continents. It laid the foundation for classical civilizations and significantly influenced the course of human history. Classical Antiquity. Classical antiquity refers to a broad period of cultural history centered around the Mediterranean Sea, encompassing the civilizations of ancient Greece and ancient Rome. Spanning roughly from the 8th century BCE to the 6th century CE, this era is marked by significant developments in art, philosophy, politics, literature, and science that have profoundly influenced Western civilization. Key features include the rise of city-states like Athens and Sparta, the establishment of democracy, the philosophical contributions of figures such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, and the expansion of the Roman Republic and later the Roman Empire. Classical antiquity also witnessed monumental architectural achievements, the codification of laws, and the spread of Greco-Roman culture across Europe, North Africa, and the Near East. The period concluded with the decline of the Western Roman Empire and the transition into the Middle Ages. Late Antiquity. Late Antiquity is a historical period that spans approximately from the 3rd to the 8th century CE, marking the transition from classical antiquity to the Middle Ages in Europe and the Mediterranean. This era is characterized by significant social, cultural, religious, and political transformations. It witnessed the decline and eventual fall of the Western Roman Empire, the continuation of the Eastern Roman Byzantine Empire, and the rise of new powers such as the Sasanian Empire and early Islamic caliphates. Late antiquity saw the spread of Christianity and the establishment of it as a dominant religion, alongside the persistence of pagan traditions and the emergence of new religious movements. The period also experienced shifts in art, architecture, and intellectual life, blending classical heritage with emerging medieval forms. Economically and demographically, late antiquity was marked by urban decline in some regions, changes in trade networks, and population movements including migrations and invasions by various groups such as the Goths, Vandals, and Huns. Overall, late antiquity is a complex and dynamic period that laid the foundations for the medieval world and shaped the course of European and Mediterranean history. Classical Antiquity. Classical antiquity refers to a broad period of cultural history centered around the Mediterranean Sea, encompassing the civilizations of ancient Greece and ancient Rome. This era spans roughly from the 8th century BCE, marked by the rise of Greek city-states like Athens and Sparta, to the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century CE. It is characterized by significant developments in art, philosophy, politics, literature, and science that have profoundly influenced Western civilization. Key features include the establishment of democracy in Athens, the philosophical contributions of figures such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, the expansion and governance of the Roman Republic and later the Roman Empire, and monumental architectural achievements like the Parthenon and the Colosseum. Classical antiquity laid the foundational cultural, legal, and intellectual frameworks that shaped medieval and modern Western societies. Archaic Period. The Archaic Period in history, particularly within the context of classical antiquity, refers to the era spanning approximately from the 8th century BCE to the early 5th century BCE. This period marks the formative phase of ancient Greek civilization following the Greek Dark Ages and preceding the Classical Period. It is characterized by significant developments in political structures, art, architecture, and social organization. During the Archaic Period, the polis, city-state, emerged as the central political unit, with notable examples including Athens, Sparta, and Corinth. This era saw the establishment of early forms of democracy and oligarchy, as well as the codification of laws. Artistic expression evolved with the introduction of monumental sculpture, such as Kuroi and Korai statues, and advancements in pottery styles like black figure and red figure techniques. Architecturally, the period witnessed the construction of the first large-scale temples dedicated to the gods, laying the groundwork for classical architectural orders. Additionally, the Archaic Period was marked by increased colonization across the Mediterranean and Black Sea regions, facilitating cultural exchange and economic expansion. Philosophically and literarily, this era produced early works of epic poetry and laid the foundations for later philosophical inquiry. Overall, the Archaic Period represents a critical transitional phase that shaped the cultural and political landscape of ancient Greece, setting the stage for the achievements of the Classical Period. Classical Period. The Classical Period, spanning roughly from the 5th to the 4th century BCE, is a significant era in ancient history primarily associated with the civilizations of Greece and Rome. This period is marked by remarkable advancements in art, philosophy, politics, and science that have profoundly influenced Western culture. In Greece, the Classical Period witnessed the rise of city-states such as Athens and Sparta, the development of democracy, and the flourishing of philosophy, with figures like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. It was also the age of great dramatists like Sophocles and Euripides, and monumental architectural achievements exemplified by the Parthenon. The period culminated in the conquests of Alexander the Great, which spread Greek culture throughout the Mediterranean and Near East. In Rome, the Classical Period includes the Roman Republic and the early Roman Empire, characterized by legal innovations, military expansion, and the integration of diverse cultures. Overall, the Classical Period represents a foundational epoch that shaped political thought, artistic expression, and intellectual inquiry in the Western tradition. Hellenistic Period. The Hellenistic Period, spanning from the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BCE to the emergence of the Roman Empire around 31 BCE, marks a significant era in classical antiquity characterized by the spread of Greek culture across a vast territory stretching from Greece to Egypt and into parts of Asia. This period witnessed the fusion of Greek traditions with local cultures, leading to advancements in art, science, philosophy, and governance. Key features include the establishment of Hellenistic kingdoms, such as the Ptolemaic Kingdom in Egypt, the Seleucid Empire in Asia, and the Antigonid dynasty in Macedonia. The era is notable for the rise of cities like Alexandria, which became centers of learning and culture. Philosophical schools such as Stoicism and Epicureanism flourished, and scientific achievements were made by figures like Archimedes and Eratosthenes. The Hellenistic period thus represents a transformative phase that shaped the cultural and political landscape of the ancient Mediterranean and Near East, bridging the classical Greek world and the Roman era. Roman Republic. The Roman Republic was a period of ancient Roman civilization that began with the overthrow of the Roman monarchy in 509 BCE and lasted until the establishment of the Roman Empire in 27 BCE. It was characterized by a complex system of government that balanced power among various institutions, including the Senate, popular assemblies, and elected magistrates such as consuls. The Republic expanded Rome's territory through military conquest and alliances, leading to increased wealth and influence across the Mediterranean. Key features of the Republic included the codification of laws, notably the 12 Tables, and the development of political concepts such as checks and balances and representative government. Social conflicts, such as those between the patricians, aristocratic families, and plebeians, common citizens, shaped the political landscape and led to reforms that gradually extended political rights. The Republic ultimately faced internal challenges, including civil wars and power struggles, which culminated in Julius Caesar's rise and the transition to imperial rule under Augustus. Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was one of the most influential civilizations in world history, spanning from 27 BCE, when Augustus became the first emperor, to the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE. It originated from the Roman Republic, which transitioned into an autocratic regime under Augustus. The empire expanded extensively across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, creating a vast network of provinces connected by roads, trade, and military presence. Roman society was characterized by a complex social hierarchy, advanced engineering and architecture, and a legal system that has influenced modern law. The empire played a crucial role in spreading Roman culture, language, Latin, and governance structures. Key events include the Pax Romana, a period of relative peace and stability, the division into Eastern and Western Roman empires, and the eventual decline due to internal strife, economic troubles, and invasions by barbarian tribes. The Eastern Roman Empire, known as the Byzantine Empire, continued until 1453 CE. The Roman Empire's legacy profoundly shaped Western civilization, impacting language, law, politics, architecture, and religion. Middle Ages. The Middle Ages, also known as the Medieval Period, spans roughly from the 5th to the late 15th century, beginning with the fall of the Western Roman Empire and leading up to the Renaissance and the Age of Discovery. This era is characterized by the feudal system, the rise of kingdoms and empires, the influence of the Catholic Church, and significant social, economic, and cultural transformations. Key events include the spread of Christianity, the Crusades, the Black Death, and the 100 Years' War. The period saw the development of medieval art, architecture, notably Gothic cathedrals, and scholasticism. The Middle Ages laid the foundation for modern Europe through changes in governance, law, and society. Early Middle Ages. The Early Middle Ages, also known as the Dark Ages, is a period in European history spanning roughly from the 5th to the 10th century AD, following the decline of the Western Roman Empire. This era is characterized by significant social, political, and cultural transformations. The collapse of centralized Roman authority led to the fragmentation of Europe into various Germanic kingdoms and the gradual emergence of feudalism as the dominant social structure. The spread of Christianity played a crucial role in shaping the cultural and political landscape, with the Church becoming a unifying institution across diverse territories. Economically, the period saw a decline in urban life and long-distance trade, leading to a more localized and agrarian society. Despite earlier perceptions of stagnation, the early Middle Ages laid important foundations for the later medieval period, including the Carolingian Renaissance, which fostered a revival of learning and arts. Key events include the establishment of the Byzantine Empire, the rise of the Frankish kingdom under Charlemagne, and the Viking invasions that reshaped northern Europe. Overall, the early Middle Ages represent a complex and formative era that bridged the ancient and medieval worlds. High Middle Ages. The High Middle Ages, spanning approximately from the 11th to the 13th centuries, represent a period of significant development and transformation in European history. This era is characterized by the consolidation of feudal societies, the growth of powerful monarchies, and the expansion of trade and cities. Key features include the establishment of universities, the flourishing of Gothic architecture, and the Crusades, which were military campaigns aimed at reclaiming the Holy Land. The period also saw important social and economic changes, such as the rise of the merchant class and improvements in agricultural techniques. The High Middle Ages laid the foundation for the transition to the Late Middle Ages and the eventual emergence of the Renaissance. Late Middle Ages. The Late Middle Ages, spanning approximately from the 14th to the 15th century, marks the final period of the medieval era in European history. This era is characterized by significant social, political, and economic transformations that set the stage for the transition to the Renaissance and the early modern period. Key events include the Black Death, which drastically reduced the population and altered social structures, the 100 Years' War between England and France, which reshaped national identities and feudal power, and the decline of the feudal system alongside the rise of centralized monarchies. Additionally, the late Middle Ages witnessed cultural and intellectual developments, such as the early stirrings of humanism and advancements in art and architecture. This period also saw the increasing influence of the Catholic Church, alongside challenges that would eventually lead to religious reforms. Overall, the late Middle Ages represent a complex and dynamic phase that profoundly influenced the trajectory of European history. Early Modern Period. The early modern period, spanning roughly from the late 15th century to the late 18th century, marks a transformative era in world history characterized by significant social, political, economic, and cultural changes. This period follows the Middle Ages and precedes the onset of the Industrial Revolution and the Modern Age. Key developments include the Renaissance, which revived classical learning and arts, the Age of Discovery, during which European powers explored and colonized vast parts of the Americas, Africa, and Asia, the Protestant Reformation, which challenged the authority of the Catholic Church and led to religious fragmentation in Europe, and the rise of nation-states and centralized monarchies. Additionally, the early modern period saw advancements in science and technology, exemplified by figures like Copernicus and Galileo, and the emergence of capitalism and global trade networks. These changes laid the foundation for the modern world, influencing political ideologies, cultural norms, and economic systems that continue to shape contemporary society. Renaissance, 14th to 17th century. The Renaissance, spanning from the 14th to the 17th century, was a profound cultural, artistic, intellectual, and social movement that marked the transition from the Middle Ages to the early modern period in Europe. Originating in Italy, it spread across the continent, fostering a renewed interest in the classical art, literature, and philosophies of ancient Greece and Rome. This period is characterized by significant developments in art, such as the use of perspective and naturalism, exemplified by figures like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. The Renaissance also witnessed advancements in science and exploration, with individuals like Galileo and Columbus challenging traditional views and expanding the known world. Humanism, a key intellectual movement of the Renaissance, emphasized the value of human potential and achievements. Politically and socially, the Renaissance contributed to the decline of feudalism and the rise of centralized states and modern nation-states. Overall, the Renaissance laid the foundational cultural and intellectual groundwork for the modern Western world. Age of Discovery, 15th to 17th century. The Age of Discovery, spanning the 15th to 17th centuries, was a pivotal period in world history, marked by European global exploration and expansion. Initiated primarily by maritime powers such as Portugal and Spain, this era saw explorers seeking new trade routes, wealth, and territorial claims. Key figures include Christopher Columbus, who reached the Americas in 1492, Vasco da Gama, who navigated a sea route to India, and Ferdinand Magellan, whose expedition completed the first circumnavigation of the globe. The Age of Discovery led to significant cultural exchanges, the establishment of overseas colonies, and the beginning of widespread European influence across Africa, Asia, and the Americas. It also had profound consequences, including the spread of diseases to indigenous populations, the transatlantic slave trade, and shifts in global economic and political power. This period laid the foundations for the modern interconnected world and the rise of European dominance in global affairs during the early modern period. Reformation, 16th century. The Reformation of the 16th century was a major religious and political movement that aimed to reform the Roman Catholic Church and resulted in the creation of Protestant churches. It began in 1517 when Martin Luther, a German monk and theologian, published his 95 Theses, criticizing the Church's practices, particularly the sale of indulgences. The movement spread rapidly across Europe, fueled by the printing press and growing discontent with church corruption and the authority of the papacy. Key figures besides Luther included John Calvin and Huldrych Zwingli, who developed distinct theological doctrines. The Reformation led to significant religious fragmentation, wars, and changes in governance, influencing the development of modern nation-states and promoting ideas of individual faith and scriptural authority. It also prompted the Catholic Counter-Reformation, which sought to reform the Church internally and reaffirm Catholic doctrine. Overall, the Reformation reshaped European society, culture, and politics during the early modern period. Scientific Revolution, 16th to 18th century. The Scientific Revolution, spanning the 16th to 18th centuries, marks a profound transformation in human understanding of the natural world. Originating in Europe during the early modern period, this era witnessed the emergence of modern science. Through developments in mathematics, physics, astronomy, biology, and chemistry, key figures such as Nicholas Copernicus, Galileo Galilei, Johannes Kepler, René Descartes, Isaac Newton, and Francis Bacon challenged traditional Aristotelian and Ptolemaic views, promoting empirical observation, experimentation, and the use of the scientific method. The revolution led to the heliocentric model of the solar system, laws of motion and universal gravitation, and advances in anatomy and chemistry. It fundamentally altered the intellectual landscape, diminishing reliance on religious and classical authorities and laying the groundwork for the Enlightenment and modern scientific inquiry. Age of Absolutism, 17th to 18th century. The Age of Absolutism, spanning the 17th to 18th centuries, was a period in European history characterized by the consolidation of power in the hands of monarchs who ruled with absolute authority. This era followed the Renaissance and Reformation, occurring during the early modern period. Absolute monarchs, such as Louis XIV of France, Peter the Great of Russia, and Frederick the Great of Prussia, centralized political power by diminishing the influence of nobles, parliaments, and other traditional institutions. They justified their rule through the doctrine of the divine right of kings, which posited that monarchs derived their authority directly from God and were accountable only to him. The Age of Absolutism saw significant developments in administration, military organization, and state building, as rulers sought to strengthen their nations economically and politically. This period also witnessed conflicts such as the 30 Years' War and the War of Spanish Succession, which shaped the balance of power in Europe. The absolutist model eventually faced challenges from emerging Enlightenment ideas advocating for constitutionalism, individual rights, and separation of powers, setting the stage for future political transformations. Enlightenment, 17th to 19th century. The Enlightenment, spanning the 17th to 19th centuries, was an intellectual and cultural movement that emphasized reason, individualism, and skepticism of traditional authority. Originating in Europe during the early modern period, it challenged established doctrines in politics, religion, and society, advocating for scientific inquiry, human rights, and secular governance. Key figures such as John Locke, Voltaire, Immanuel Kant, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau contributed to ideas about liberty, democracy, and the social contract, which profoundly influenced the development of modern Western thought. The Enlightenment laid the groundwork for revolutionary movements, including the American and French revolutions, and shaped modern concepts of citizenship, equality, and justice. Colonial Era, 16th to 19th century. The Colonial Era, spanning from the 16th to the 19th century, marks a significant period in world history characterized by European powers exploring, conquering, and establishing colonies across the Americas, Africa, Asia, and Oceania. This era began with the Age of Discovery, when nations such as Spain and Portugal led maritime expeditions that resulted in the establishment of overseas empires. The motivations behind colonization included economic gain, the spread of Christianity, and the pursuit of political power. Key features of the colonial era include the transatlantic slave trade, the exploitation of indigenous populations, the establishment of plantation economies, and the cultural exchanges and conflicts that shaped global history. The period also saw the rise of mercantilism and the development of global trade networks. The colonial era profoundly influenced the political, social, and economic structures of both the colonizing and colonized regions, setting the stage for modern nation-states and global interactions. It ended in the 19th century as movements for independence and decolonization gained momentum, reshaping the world map. Modern history. Modern history refers to the period of history from approximately the late 15th century to the present day. It begins with significant events such as the Renaissance, the Age of Discovery, and the Reformation, which marked the transition from the medieval period to the modern era. This period is characterized by major developments including the rise of nation-states, the expansion of European empires through colonization, the scientific revolution, and the Enlightenment, which influenced political thought and social structures. The Industrial Revolution brought profound economic and technological changes, leading to urbanization and shifts in labor systems. Modern history also encompasses significant political revolutions, such as the American and French Revolutions, the World Wars, the Cold War, decolonization, and the ongoing processes of globalization. Studying modern history involves understanding the complex interactions of social, political, economic, and cultural factors that have shaped the contemporary world. Renaissance, 14th to 17th century. The Renaissance, spanning from the 14th to the 17th century, was a profound cultural, intellectual, and artistic movement that marked the transition from the Middle Ages to modern history. Originating in Italy, it emphasized a revival of classical learning and wisdom from ancient Greece and Rome. This period witnessed significant advancements in art, literature, science, and philosophy, characterized by figures such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Galileo Galilei. The Renaissance promoted humanism, focusing on human potential and achievements, which influenced education, politics, and religion. It also saw the invention of the printing press, facilitating the spread of knowledge across Europe. The Renaissance laid the foundation for the modern worldview and contributed to the development of the scientific method, exploration, and the eventual rise of the Enlightenment. Age of Discovery, 15th to 17th century. The Age of Discovery, spanning from the 15th to the 17th century, was a pivotal period in global history, marked by extensive overseas exploration. European powers, primarily Portugal and Spain, embarked on maritime expeditions to discover new trade routes, territories, and resources. This era began with figures such as Prince Henry the Navigator, who promoted exploration along the African coast, and culminated in landmark voyages like Christopher Columbus's 1492 expedition to the Americas and Vasco da Gama's sea route to India in 1498. The Age of Discovery led to the establishment of vast colonial empires, significant cultural exchanges, and profound economic transformations, including the rise of global trade networks and the beginnings of European dominance in world affairs. It also had complex consequences, including the displacement and decline of indigenous populations, the transatlantic slave trade, and lasting geopolitical shifts. This period is foundational to understanding the development of the modern world and the interconnectedness of global history. Scientific Revolution, 16th to 18th century. The Scientific Revolution, spanning the 16th to 18th centuries, marks a profound transformation in human understanding of the natural world, laying the foundation for modern science. Originating in Europe, this period witnessed the emergence of new methodologies based on observation, experimentation, and the questioning of traditional authorities such as Aristotle and the Church. Key figures include Nicholas Copernicus, who proposed the heliocentric model of the solar system, Galileo Galilei, who advanced telescopic observations and championed empirical evidence, Johannes Kepler, who formulated laws of planetary motion, Isaac Newton, who developed the laws of motion and universal gravitation, and Francis Bacon and René Descartes, who contributed to the development of the scientific method. The revolution challenged long-held beliefs, promoted a mechanistic view of nature, and emphasized reason and evidence over superstition and dogma. Its impact extended beyond science, influencing philosophy, religion, and society, ultimately ushering in the Enlightenment and shaping the modern worldview. Enlightenment, 17th to 19th century. The Enlightenment, spanning the 17th to 19th centuries, was an intellectual and cultural movement that emphasized reason, individualism, and skepticism of traditional authority. Originating in Europe, it challenged established doctrines in religion, politics, and society, promoting ideals such as liberty, progress, tolerance, constitutional government, and separation of church and state. Key figures included philosophers like John Locke, Voltaire, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and Immanuel Kant, who contributed to political theory, ethics, and epistemology. The Enlightenment influenced revolutions such as the American and French revolutions and laid the groundwork for modern democratic institutions and scientific inquiry. It marked a shift from feudal and religious worldviews to secular and rational perspectives, profoundly shaping modern Western thought and society. Industrial Revolution, 18th to 19th century. The Industrial Revolution, spanning from the late 18th to the 19th century, was a transformative period in history, marked by the transition from agrarian economies to industrialized and urban societies. Originating in Britain, it involved significant technological advancements, such as the steam engine, mechanized textile production, and improvements in iron-making techniques. These innovations led to increased production capacity, the rise of factories, and changes in labor systems. The revolution also spurred social and economic changes, including urbanization, the growth of the working and middle classes, and shifts in living conditions. It had profound impacts globally, influencing economic structures, social dynamics, and paving the way for modern industrial economies. Age of Revolutions, late 18th to early 19th century. The Age of Revolutions, spanning the late 18th to early 19th century, refers to a period marked by profound political, social, and economic upheavals that reshaped nations and ideologies across the globe. This era is characterized by a series of interconnected revolutionary movements, including the American Revolution, 1775 to 1783, the French Revolution, 1789 to 1799, the Haitian Revolution, 1791 to 1804, and various Latin American wars of independence. These revolutions challenged traditional monarchies and colonial empires, promoting ideals such as liberty, equality, popular sovereignty, and nationalism. The American Revolution established a republic based on Enlightenment principles, inspiring subsequent revolutions. The French Revolution radically transformed French society by overthrowing the monarchy, abolishing feudal privileges, and promoting secularism and citizenship rights, though it also led to periods of violence and the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte. The Haitian Revolution was the first successful slave revolt, leading to the establishment of the first Black Republic and challenging racial hierarchies. Latin American revolutions, influenced by Enlightenment ideas and earlier revolutions, resulted in the independence of numerous countries from Spanish and Portuguese rule. Collectively, the Age of Revolutions significantly altered the political landscape, contributed to the spread of democratic ideals, and set the stage for modern nation-states and global political ideologies. Victorian Era, 19th century. The Victorian era refers to the period of British history during the reign of Queen Victoria, from 1837 to 1901. This era is characterized by significant social, economic, and technological changes that shaped modern Britain and had a profound impact on the world. It was a time of industrial revolution, marked by rapid industrialization and urbanization, which led to the growth of cities and changes in labor and social structures. The Victorian era also saw the expansion of the British Empire, making it the foremost global power of the time. Socially, the period was defined by strict moral codes, class distinctions, and a focus on family values. Advances in science, literature, and the arts flourished, with notable figures such as Charles Dickens, the Bronte sisters, and Charles Darwin emerging during this time. The era also witnessed significant reforms in education, public health, and workers' rights, reflecting the complexities and contradictions of a society in transition. Imperialism and Colonialism, 19th to early 20th century. Imperialism and colonialism during the 19th to early 20th century refer to the period when European powers, along with the United States and Japan, expanded their control over vast territories across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. This era was marked by the aggressive acquisition of colonies and the establishment of political and economic dominance over indigenous populations. The motivations behind imperialism included economic interests, such as access to raw materials and new markets, strategic considerations like naval bases and geopolitical influence, as well as ideological factors including the belief in racial superiority and the civilizing mission. Key events include the scramble for Africa, where European powers partitioned almost the entire continent, the British Raj in India, and the establishment of spheres of influence in China. This period also saw significant resistance from colonized peoples and had profound impacts on global trade, cultural exchanges, and the political boundaries that shaped the modern world. The consequences of imperialism and colonialism continue to influence international relations, economic disparities, and cultural identities today. World War I, 1914 to 1918. World War I, also known as the Great War, was a global conflict that lasted from 1914 to 1918. It involved many of the world's great powers, divided into two main alliances: the Allies, including France, the United Kingdom, Russia, and later the United States, and the Central Powers, primarily Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. The war was triggered by the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary in June 1914, which set off a chain of events fueled by militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. The conflict was characterized by trench warfare, technological innovations such as machine guns, tanks, and chemical weapons, and massive casualties. The war ended with the defeat of the Central Powers and led to significant political changes, including the collapse of empires, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, Russian, and German, the redrawing of national boundaries, and the establishment of the League of Nations aimed at preventing future conflicts. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919 formally ended the war, but also imposed harsh penalties on Germany, sowing the seeds for World War II. World War I had profound social, economic, and cultural impacts, reshaping the 20th century and influencing international relations for decades. Interwar Period, 1918 to 1939. The Interwar Period, 1918 to 1939, refers to the years between the end of World War I and the beginning of World War II. This era was marked by significant political, economic, and social changes worldwide. Politically, the Treaty of Versailles in 1919 reshaped national boundaries and imposed reparations on Germany, fostering resentment that contributed to the rise of totalitarian regimes, including Nazism in Germany and fascism in Italy. Economically, the period experienced both recovery and turmoil, highlighted by the Roaring Twenties prosperity, followed by the Great Depression starting in 1929, which caused widespread unemployment and hardship. Socially and culturally, the interwar years saw shifts in art, literature, and societal norms, with movements such as modernism and the Harlem Renaissance gaining prominence. Internationally, the League of Nations was established in an attempt to maintain peace, though it ultimately failed to prevent the outbreak of World War II. The interwar period is thus a critical phase in modern history that set the stage for major global conflicts and transformations. World War II, 1939 to 1945. World War II, 1939 to 1945, was a global conflict that involved most of the world's nations, including all of the great powers, eventually forming two opposing military alliances, the Allies and the Axis. It was the deadliest conflict in human history, marked by significant events such as the Holocaust, the use of nuclear weapons, and widespread destruction. The war began with Germany's invasion of Poland in 1939, leading Britain and France to declare war on Germany. Key theaters of war included Europe, the Pacific, North Africa, and Asia. Major turning points included the Battle of Stalingrad, D-Day landings, and the dropping of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The war ended with the unconditional surrender of the Axis powers in 1945, leading to significant geopolitical changes, the establishment of the United Nations, and the beginning of the Cold War. Cold War Era, 1947 to 1991. The Cold War Era, 1947 to 1991, refers to the period of geopolitical tension between the United States and its NATO allies on one side, and the Soviet Union and its Warsaw Pact allies on the other. This era was characterized by ideological conflict between capitalism and communism, nuclear arms race, espionage, proxy wars, and political confrontations without direct military conflict between the superpowers. Key events include the Berlin blockade, Korean War, Cuban Missile Crisis, Vietnam War, and the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. The Cold War influenced global alliances, economic policies, and cultural exchanges, ultimately ending with the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, which marked a significant shift in international relations and the emergence of the United States as the sole superpower. Post-Cold War Era, 1991 to present. The post-Cold War era, spanning from 1991 to the present, marks the period following the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War. This era is characterized by significant geopolitical shifts, including the emergence of the United States as the sole superpower and the expansion of globalization. Key features include the redefinition of international relations, the rise of regional conflicts and interventions, the spread of democratic governance in various parts of the world, and the challenges posed by terrorism and transnational threats. Economically, the era has seen rapid technological advancements and the integration of global markets. Additionally, new security concerns such as cyber warfare and climate change have come to the forefront. The post-Cold War era continues to evolve, influencing contemporary political, social, and economic dynamics worldwide. Conclusion. Thank you for listening to our section on history. Onward ho!